That was excellent, very inspirational for primary care, but also for specialists. So thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here today among this group of what I'm going to call happy warriors. That's really nice for a change, because if you've been to medical meetings lately, they're really not as joyous as they used to be. But I'm sensing something different among this group of doctors. I am especially grateful to Dr. Lee Gross for inviting me to be with you today. We are presently witnessing a movement of courageous doctors staking a claim to what is rightfully theirs, and in doing so, they could save our beloved profession. The direct primary care movement and the free market medical revolution has the potential to put the natural order back into medicine. But putting the natural order back into medicine requires doctors to believe in themselves, to believe themselves to be the possessors of everything that it takes to reclaim medicine. Physicians actually have it, but they don't believe it right now. And that's because we have been attempting to practice medicine under a form of feudalism, the physicians being the present-day vassals, the administrators and the bureaucrats being the present-day lords. Sadly, physicians now believe the only way to survive practicing medicine today is to have the protection of those who are currently lording over us. But that protection has come at a very high price. In a feudalistic practice, the physician vassals are assigned a small plot of office space, a few staff, and the latest incarnation of the interminable EHR. We are then expected to continually till the soil of patient care and to bring to our protector the financial fruits of our labor. We are allowed to keep a small percentage of what we collect, but the rest is taken as the price to practice medicine. We must also give to our overlords the respect and reverence they feel they deserve, lest we be labeled disruptive physicians. You see, a silent, dormant vassal, one who does not challenge their so-called protectors, would be the most prized vassal of all. But if we remember our history, feudalism failed centuries ago as a construct for a functional society. I believe we are seeing the same fate befall medical feudalism, because it too is a failed construct for a functional healthcare delivery system. But how do we get physicians to reject medical feudalism and to adopt the free market? I believe it will require a drastic change in the mindset of most of our physician colleagues, as was the case in my own life. It was just a few years ago that I was in what I would describe as a deeply dormant phase of my professional life. I stayed silent throughout most of my career on the important debates surrounding the economics and politics of medicine. Most of us made a purposeful choice that we would focus on taking care of the medical needs of our patient as our oath obligated, rather than taking on the bureaucrats and the administrators. Well, here we are today, overworked, unfulfilled, and being labeled as burned out, beholden not to our patients, but to these very bureaucrats and administrators. There was an issue, though, that jarred me out of my dormancy, which motivated me to activate and to become what I like to call a defender of the profession. That issue was maintenance of certification, an unproven recertification mandate which effectively takes the lifetime medical doctorate and converts it into a 2-year certificate. Although MOC initially motivated me to activate, I quickly realized that once you stand in defense of the profession, you are not standing up for just yourself. You are standing for other doctors. You are standing for other doctors. It's really not about you. It's about your fellow physicians. And I came to understand that once activated, there is no turning back, because you love the way it makes you feel. It gives you an energy that many physicians are lacking right now. To be perfectly honest, standing in defense of the profession is downright invigorating. But what makes our profession worth defending? Our profession is one of the original great learned professions, and there were only three: medicine, law, and theology. A learned profession is characterized by the accumulation of extensive knowledge and a willingness to teach and share that knowledge. There are obligations that come with being a member of one of these learned professions. There is an obligation to the client, or in our case, the patient, to the community, and to the profession itself. And I believe that is our biggest obligation at this time, the obligation and commitment to our profession. We are obligated to attempt to wake up this dormant giant, and by that I mean the entire house of medicine. We want all physicians to discover what we now know. There is a better way. But physicians have been dormant for a very long time, and unfortunately, many have become comfortable in that state. I would like to spend a few minutes discussing this concept of the dormant physician, something which afflicted me for most of my 30 years in medicine. The good news is, it's curable. The definition of dormant is something that is not active, growing, or being used, but is capable of becoming so. When I speak of the dormant physician, I am speaking of our physician voices not being used to speak out in defense of our profession, and of our inaction as physicians in fighting against conditions which we know denigrate our profession. I ask you to think back to your medical school days and answer the following. Would you have thought then that you and me and most of our fine colleagues would be so silent as our great and noble profession is being destroyed, as profiteers have overtaken the profession of medicine and are using our skills to profiteer off of the patients that we are committed to treat and that we have taken an oath not to harm? There is a reason we are so silent. It is because we are in what is called consequential dormancy. What do I mean by that term, consequential dormancy? Well, there are species out there that don't normally go dormant. It's not part of their normal life cycle. However, they will go into a dormant phase as a consequence of adverse conditions, essentially as a survival mechanism. I believe physicians have been driven into dormancy as a consequence of the many adverse conditions we face. What are these adverse conditions? Well, as we also like to say in medicine, they are too numerous to count, so let me just name a few. MACRA and MIPS. The enormity of this regulatory morass presented to physicians and the country as the so-called doc fix is truly incomprehensible, and it has already been proven to be failed policy. ICD-10, formerly ICD-9, and the loss of our medical language because of codes. Third parties, including Medicare, which have now taken the doctor's orders and made them doctor's suggestions, which I contend aren't even taken seriously. Your doctor's orders are promptly ignored the moment they are written. These same parties use language to promote themselves as payers when they do any and all things to avoid paying. A more accurate descriptor might be denier, interferer, or delayer, but payer, I think not. RAC audits, penalties, the fact that we, among the most highly educated and skilled professionals in this land, ever allowed ourselves to be penalized for not doing the latest Color in the Lines project by CMS is a complete travesty. HIPAA, which shuts down doctor-to-doctor communication but allows the free flow of patient data to any and everyone else without the patient's knowledge or consent. MOC. If we physicians are forced to maintain our certification every 2 years, learning things we don't need and relearning areas of medicine we do not practice, there will be no time for anything else, much less the defense of our profession. Certificate of Need, stark prohibition of physician-owned hospitals, which doesn't allow for doctors to profit. Most doctors tend not to profiteer, but these laws encourage non-medical entities to do just that, They profiteer off of our skills and off of our patients. Politicians and health policy wonks who devise and pass legislation such as the HMO Act, the Health IT Act, ACA, MACRA, and MIPS, just to name a few, which effectively transforms our exam rooms into the laboratories of absurdity. These same politicians allow for and encourage the encroachment of individuals into our learned profession who have not acquired the extensive knowledge and skill that has been the standard for our profession. The EHR, that's the one that I want to focus on because I do believe this is the biggest threat to our professionalism. The EHR has destroyed the doctor's note, taking a once relevant, succinct, and honest document and turning it into the exact opposite, a dishonest, voluminous billing or coding record filled with irrelevant junk data that the physician is forced to enter. The government-mandated EHR has profoundly denigrated our profession, and it completely demoralizes physicians. And I believe it is the main contributor to the epidemic of physician burnout. I do not believe burnout is because physicians are working hard. That's kind of in our DNA. It's what we do. But our work has to have meaning, and because of the EHR, the work we are now doing is meaningless to physicians. The EHR indentures physicians into a servitude where they are doing 6 to 10 hours of uncompensated work a week. That works out to 4 to 6 weeks a year. The AMA recently tweeted out an article describing the 83 minutes a night that family physicians are spending at home doing tasks on their EHR. Instead of calling this an abomination and calling for the end of the EHR, the AMA chose to term it pajama time. I've also seen it referred to as date night with your EHR. I guess they were attempting to be funny in describing this, but frankly, I don't see it as humorous. When a physician provides uncompensated care to patients who are unable to pay because they are poor, that is a noble act. But this is not uncompensated care. This is indentured labor, which in effect props up health IT and their junk product, and they have no impetus to change it because it is government mandated and because they are getting free labor. If one looks up the meaning of indentured servant, it will sound very familiar to physicians who use the EHR, but there is a glaring difference. In the past, an indentured servant eventually was freed from their servitude and commitment, and they had in return worked for something of very great value, such as American citizenship or the right to be brought to this great land. Physicians will never be freed from their servitude to the valueless EHR unless we just all decide to say no more. I recently tweeted on this topic, which is something that I like to do, and it said, in medicine, if we discover that something doesn't work or causes harm, we end it. We just stop doing it. But with a government mandate, a bad idea is forever #ditch the EHR. You see, our silence and our inaction works to the advantage of some, as I have just pointed out, and those entities like us in our dormant state. But I suggest we try something new. We need to rise out of our dormancy. We must activate in defense of our beloved profession, and each and every one of us must become defenders of the profession. We need to come forth as a profession and say this simple but powerful word, no. Our professionalism, our oath, and our medical ethic demands that in unison we say, we are physicians and we don't do it that way. But can we be so bold? Can we just say no, and can we really take it back? Yes, I believe that we can, because there is a truism about physicians, which some of us seem to have forgotten, or maybe we've never known it, or we may just have never thought about it. But here it is. It is the physician who possesses the knowledge. It is the physician who has the skill. And that knowledge and skill is always with you. So where you go, it goes. It does not stay behind if you decide to get out of a situation which forces you to do things counter to your oath. All of your education, your training, and now your experience is yours, and it has enormous value. No one else can do anything without us, frankly. We're the ones with the knowledge, and they, insurance companies, government, pharmacies, corporatists, health IT, administrators, and yes, even the patients are the ones with the need. We're the ones, however, who have taken the oath. We are the ones with the responsibility to our patients and our beloved profession. And that's exactly why we must take it back. Well, all we need to do is to look right here in this room and to this movement. Don't you remember the predictions about primary care? Primary care doctors were going to be a thing of the past. They wouldn't be needed. The primary care doctor was going to be easily replaced by non-physician extenders. Well, that's all wrong, as we now see. The independent, direct primary doctor has said, forget you to insurance companies. They've said, forget you to Medicare. And they're saying, forget you to mega corporate pharmacies because they are dispensing medication right out of their own offices. They are taking their valuable knowledge and skill set directly to the patient, and it is revolutionizing care in a 21st century way. But it is also going back to a kind of traditionalism, because that's the way it used to be. The doctor and the patient had a very direct relationship in all things, including payments, and there were no superfluous intermediaries whose only role today is to profit off of our skill sets and off the backs of our patients. The direct primary care doctor is now rising out of their dormancy to show us how it can be done. And they are setting the example for the rest of the physicians of this nation. They are reclaiming their rightful role as primary dictator of patient care and as the most vital physician of the entire team. These independent physicians no longer need protection from bureaucrats and administrators. They are now their own protectors, standing for the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship and in defense of the profession. The natural order in medicine returns the primacy of the doctor in all aspects of patient care. But my caution to you today is, there are challenges being made against this movement, which would transfigure the purest model of DPC to once again introduce intermediaries. The key is you don't need middlemen if your prices are kept fair and you provide what the patients want and need. Easy, timely access to their physician and true quality care provided by someone they trust. So I'll wind down with this thought. On a recent visit to the Reagan Library, I learned of a plaque that he kept on his desk during his entire presidency, which said, "It can be done." I've thought about that a lot because we often hear that medicine is too far gone and that doctors are powerless to change it. Well, I suggest to you that it absolutely can be done, but we need to rise out of our dormant phase to become defenders of the profession. If we stand for the profession of medicine and we do what we know is right for it, that automatically translates into what is right for our patients. It's the way that it works. The two are intertwined and they cannot be disassociated. That bond is forever. So for the rest of my medical career and maybe beyond, I am committed to advance the concept of the activated physician and to encourage every physician I meet, including each and every one of you, to become a defender of our great profession. Thank you very much for having me today.
I was really hoping to go after Chad.